criteria and what we was voting for far as meeting the MVPs. And I said 3 weeks ago, it's going to come down to Tatum, Embiid, Giannis, and Jokic for me. And whichever team whichever guy team has the best record, that's who I'm voting for because they always like 2 games apart.
Fair.
And so Giannis is going to finish with the best record. Now, on the other hand, would I like Embiid to win the MVP? Does he deserve it? Yes. And guess what? If he do win the MVP, although he's not getting big perk vote, I will be at his ceremony or whatever the case may be, sitting front row listening to his MVP speech. But can I also talk to you and what?
So that's the quote right there, and let's really dissect it. So in this tweet, in this clip, he talks about how essentially, and mind you, the prior context is this is Mr. Embiid himself. You know what I'm saying? This is the main guy that's been pushing the Embiid narrative for the whole year, aside from Drew Hanlon. But on the national media scale, he has been the main guy pushing the Embiid agenda. He was the same dude a month ago talking about how, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, man, this is looking a little racist with how y'all are treating Embiid compared to Jokic. You know what I'm saying? Why do y'all keep moving the goalposts? You know, in the last 30 years since 1990, the only MVP to have not scored top 30, to not score in top 10 in a season is Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, and Nikola Jokic. What's going on? This was the same dude making those arguments, and for him to say a month after the fact that his vote is just gonna come down to who has the most wins between Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, and Jason Tatum. And shout out to Jason Tatum. He is not in this conversation. I don't know what to tell you. I know Perk, you know, he commentates some Celtics games, so I understand where he's coming from and the bias there. Former Celtic himself. But nah. I can't go. Because again, let's just backtrack. Let's talk about his take from a month ago. It primarily was about, you know, it was insinuating that Jokic is only getting the praise that he's getting, or a big part of it is because of the race factor. That's number one. Right? Number two is the fact that the reason why Jokic is getting all this praise is because people want to move the goalpost. When during that time, the exact criteria he apparently actually has for the MVP voting could be applied at that time. So when people were looking at Nikola Jokic and saying that, yo, he is putting up insane numbers. You know what I'm saying? Putting up insane numbers and has the best record in the league. That was the main argument people had. if I'm being completely honest. Because logical people understand that the MVP voting is really about this 82 game sample size. Prior seasons should not take effect. It should not affect your logic. And just looking at this 82 game sample size, Nikola Jokic is putting up monster numbers and has the best record in the league. Is leading his team to the best record in the league. Right? That was the main argument people had. So it wasn't like people were just giving Jokic this award. He wasn't number one on the ladder just for no reason. You know what I'm saying? And then for Perk to essentially have this dumbass argument is disappointing. It's just insanely disappointing. And I think it's taken away from the progressiveness that the MVP award and the conversation has had over the last couple of years. It really started in 2017 when Russell Westbrook won the MVP. But over the last, I'd say, half a decade, I think the conversation around the MVP award has become much more progressive. I think that is why Russell Westbrook won the MVP in 2017, or partially why he won the award in 2017. I think this is a reason why, in 2021 and in 2022, Nikola Jokic was in these MVP talks. Joel Embiid was in these MVP talks despite not having the best record in the league. You know what I'm saying? Because it is because the conversation has become more progressive, and it's not just best player on the best team. There's just best player on the best team. And for an actual person who has a legit vote, he is a voter in this award, to revert back, you know what I'm saying, to that logic, I feel like is such a crazy thing to do, given the fact that in 2018, because I've been in the game, I've been keeping up with Kendrick Perkins since 2018. Kendrick Perkins was the one in 2018 that had a lot of pushback for James Harden winning the MVP, because it was LeBron that was putting up the crazy numbers despite not having the team success. You know what I'm saying? And there was a lot of pushback for James Harden back then, because apparently statistically, he just didn't have it on LeBron. When, if you actually look at it, he pretty much does. And looking back, I still think James Harden deservingly won that MVP. But there's just a lot of hypocrisy going on with Kendrick Perkins. Just a lot of hypocrisy going on with Kendrick Perkins. And I'll also say about this MVP race, this is the most clown MVP race that I've ever been a part of. Not that I've been, directly a part of it, but just in terms of the conversation going on. This is the most clown MVP race I've ever seen. The amount of goalposts moving this season is crazy. The amount of dumb arguments that I felt like, we've moved past is crazy. The amount of people bringing up arguments that tie back to legacy points, legacy arguments, tying back seasons prior to the performance of this season is crazy. So you got that extreme of people looking back at other seasons to tie into their argument. That's already crazy. But then there's also the other extreme of insane recency bias, where it feels like the MVP conversation is just shifting every fucking day, every fucking game. You know what I'm saying? Like, why is Embiid dogging Jokic a really big part of this conversation? You know what I'm saying? When Embiid dropped 47 and 14 and Jokic dropped 26 and whatever, why was that such a big part of this conversation? Why was it that when they matched up again and Embiid missed the game because of an injury, that is a factor within this conversation? That shit is weird. And then so we're going on these head-to-heads, et cetera, and then a couple weeks after, we get Embiid versus Giannis and crickets. Didn't hear anything. And then just a couple days later, pretty much 2 days ago, we see Embiid drop 50 on the Celtics without Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams, by the way, and they barely won, by the way. Still almost choked that shit too. We see Embiid do that. And then we see Jokic have a really pretty bad game. I ain't gonna lie. He dropped 14 and 10. Got outplayed by Sengun. Nuggets lost to the Rockets. And people are talking about how, yeah, this is the one. Embiid locked up. He locked up the argument. You know what I'm saying? He locked up the MVP conversation. This is it. And that shit is just so crazy to me, because the last time I've ever seen head-to-head matchups be involved in the MVP conversation was 2020, surprisingly. I remember when LeBron beat the Bucks that one weekend and the Clippers that one weekend, when the MVP conversations were really ramping up. You know what I'm saying? And that game happened, and everyone was like, "Is this your MVP? Is this your MVP?" This and I thought it was clown shit back then. The second instance would probably be 2017 when Russ had that game winner against Denver, ironically. But yeah, he had that game winner 50-point triple-double against Denver, and everyone was like, yeah, the MVP is locked after today. It was a special moment, and that was a crazy game, but I understand, but I still thought that shit was clown. That shit was clown shit. And even in 2017, and that's the crazy thing about it, is that in the 2017 MVP race, I specifically remember for a majority of the season it was Harden versus Russ. You know what I'm saying? They were both putting up crazy stats. It felt like a crazy back and forth. It was one of the best MVP races I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? 2 carry jobs of a historic manner. But even back then, we didn't really care about head-to-head matchups. Or at least from my memory, it didn't feel like we cared about head-to-head matchups with Russ and Harden back then. And mind you, they actually played each other more. It wasn't just twice for the whole year. But that didn't really matter, you know? I don't know, man. This MVP race is just, to me, it's whack. Because of the fact that, because of how the media and how the NBA community have handled these conversations, whoever gets the MVP, it feels like a pity MVP. Or it feels like an MVP with an asterisk. Even though all of these players are players who are putting up tremendous numbers with tremendous team success, but because of how we'll look back on this MVP conversation, it's going to be a bunch of asterisks, right? If Embiid gets it, everyone's already saying it. It's just a here you go. Like, damn. Like, just, damn. You've been complaining so much. Here you go, dog. Like, I'm done with the complaining. Stop bitching. Here's your MVP. If Jokic gets it, people are gonna bring up race. It's a white privilege conversation. Embiid was robbed for the 3rd straight season. And then if Giannis gets it, it feels like just the scapegoat. It feels like the scapegoat answer, even though, in my opinion, he has a pretty fucking strong argument. Pretty strong argument. With the numbers he's putting up, best record in the league, half the season not having Middleton, and even when Middleton came back, he's been mid, no pun intended. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. I'll just give it to Tatum. You see what I'm saying? Embiid is averaging the most points from a center of all time. Stop it. What does that mean, though? What does that mean? What does that mean? I understand what that means in terms of he's averaging the most points of all time, and that's a crazy accomplishment. It's a crazy accomplishment. But I'm just saying, in terms of this conversation, that's what I'm saying. It's impressive. It's impressive. But in terms of this conversation, the MVP award is not just a vacuum thing. You know? Like, let's say in 2017, Russ was the first person to average a triple-double since Oscar Robertson. Highly impressive. But let's just say some dude walked out there and put up 40, 5 and 5. You know what I'm saying? Like, looking at accomplishments in a vacuum is just so But I don't know, man. I don't know. People are having dumbass takes this year, man, and it's disappointing because I feel like with the just with the conversations people are having on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, I feel like the conversation has genuinely become more logical and much smarter, and people are catching up to the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? With the rise of advanced analytics, there is more tangible evidence to explain shit. But then people twisted it to, yeah, advanced analytics, they just show you a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, all right, dog. All right, man. You guys call yourselves analysts and don't know a lick about analytics and statistics. Like, this shit is crazy, dog. That shit is crazy. And then when the people who actually know shit about analytics and statistics actually talk about analytics and statistics. It's a bunch of, you don't play basketball though. So it's like, all right, dog. y'all do whatever the fuck you want. Apparently it has to be JJ Redick, a person who believes in advanced analytics and actually had I ain't even gonna say relatively, a good NBA career, to come out here and really prove a bunch of people wrong.